lot of this tonight has been interesting in that it has been really high quality and also really grim in terms of the subject matter. So I'm going to, add to that by reading from my most recent book, which is about death. So that's, happy times for us. But I do hope you enjoy this. I'm really glad that Jen had something in Hebrew in her piece that makes me feel better for having some Spanish in mine. I hope that, be patient if you hear language that you do not understand. Hopefully the next line will make it make sense. So it is translated in that way. So this is from Don't Read This Book, my most recent novel. Context, you'll need to know, this is a flashback to the time when the protagonist, Lena, who is the greatest writer in the world, the conversation in which she comes up with the idea for the book that is so good that if anybody reads it, they will die. And the whole context of the novel is, it's a book about a book that will kill you, so you shouldn't read it. But this is the conversation she has with her grandmother in which she comes up with the idea. Lena's eye was drawn away from the scene on the porch and the little hand wrapped around her finger by the glow and chatter of the television. She's holding her nephew Daniel. There was an odd period in the late 20th century where, due to an accident of limited bandwidth for TV stations and an unusual quirk of American manners of the age, TV news prided itself more on telling the truth dispassionately than on being entertaining and partisan. It quickly recovered from this when it acquired excessive time and space on cable and found such manners were not profitable, proving American decency is always subservient to capitalism when given the chance. The news landscape fractured, the right-wing media finding it could make the most money selling fear, the left-wing media selling intellectual superiority, and the centrist media selling the least relevant, most superficial kind of infotainment it could manage to call news with a straight face. Predictably, the left then called the centrist fluff intellectually inferior, and the right called it proof of a terrifying liberal conspiracy. Abuelita had chosen one of these centrist stations where the news toggled between three stories: a political sex scandal with no policy implications, a bear on the loose in a suburban neighborhood, and a high-speed chase on a freeway somewhere. Lena mixed them in her mind to entertain herself, imagining the bear revealed to be the mistress of the politician, who, caught in his passionate but shameful bestiality tryst, hopped in his car and tried to flee down the freeway at high speeds. Grinning, she wondered which of the characters would come to a more tragic end: the politician on the side of the road, tased on the side of the road on live television, or the bear, caught in the suburb and interviewed about her affair for a grocery store tabloid. And what if the bear was now pregnant with a half-human, half-ursine child of the politician? Yes, that would be the story. This was just the prologue. The rise and tragic fall of President Half-Bear would be the bulk of the novel. ¿Cuándo vas a tener tu propia, mija? Her grandmother asked. Lena was insufficiently awakened from her reverie and couldn't compute. When will I have my own what? Half-human, half-bear hybrid? Then she realized her grandmother, without looking at her, was referring to the infant in her arms. Abuelita, you know I'm not going to have any kids. ¿Por qué no? Tus nietos quieren tanto, y eres muy bien con bebitos. Debes tener tus propios. Just because I love babies, I need to have my own? I love being an aunt, but I'm single, Abuelita, plus I'm a lesbian, so that kind of complicates things. Her grandmother, still looking down at the onions and tomatoes she was chopping for the pozole, stuck the knife out to her side and wobbled it dismissively. A mí no importa eso. Eso no es nada. Puedes hacerlo con... She turned quickly and made a strange motion at Lena, holding up her hand and squeezing something invisible back and forth. Lena couldn't help but think it was a grotesque pantomime of squeezing a boob. She tried not to laugh, and her voice came out high-pitched and almost a screech. They can do it with what? What are you talking about? Maria, Abuelita shouted to her daughter on the porch. ¿Dónde está la cuenta aguas para el polvo? What is she yelling about a turkey baster for? She's going to wake Daniel. Lena instinctively held her nephew closer to her chest and put her hand on his other ear, trying to keep her grandmother from waking him. He stirred and squeezed her index finger more firmly, but didn't wake. Then he started again when Lena's mother shouted back from the porch. En la segunda cajón a la izquierda del horno, mamá. Abuelita opened the drawer by the oven and pulled out the turkey baster. She pointed it at Lena somewhat accusatively, paused, then squeezed it twice to replicate her hand motion as if to say, how could you not understand so obvious a gesture? Lena laughed. I know we can, Abuelita, but it's a little more complicated. Y puedes hacerla sola. Well, sure, I could do it alone. That's not the point. I don't want to. Abuelita, I love you think I would be a good parent, but a single parent? I don't think so. Her grandmother put her fist on her hip, not the one holding the turkey baster, but the other, which still held the large chopping knife, with the knife blade pointing out and swinging in a way that made Lena worry she'd accidentally poke herself or stab the oven. ¿Por qué no? The question was accusatory. Lena knew her grandmother was primed for a fight if Lena said she didn't feel up to a task, any task. Scolding her children and grandchildren for their insecurities was how she showed them she loved them and believed in them. Well, for one thing, I make $12 an hour. I live in a tiny apartment. Abuelita interrupted, pointing the turkey baster at her for emphasis. Muchachas, mucho más pobre que tú tienen hijos cada día. Well, of course, poorer women than me have babies all the time. Again, not the point. Lena was tempted to say that women who were much poorer than she was were irresponsible if they were having tons of babies, but she knew she'd want to qualify that by limiting such a statement to the United States, then further to middle-class suburban America, and pretty soon her argument dissolved before she could voice it. She decided on a different tactic. Why do you want me to have kids so badly, abuelita? Los niños son los que quedan después de que morimos. Kids stick around after we die. What brought this on? But, abuelita, there are lots of things people leave behind when they die. Sculptures and buildings and pieces of music. And the good we do for other people. A smile for the right person on the right day has ripples. She noticed her grandmother's raised eyebrow. Ripples. Círculos en agua. Los que crecen cuando algo cae en el agua. Ah, ondulaciones. Es la misma palabra que pezones en inglés. She pointed at one of her own breasts with the turkey baster. Lena laughed. No, ripples, not nipples, abuelita. Ondulaciones son ripples. She rolled her eyes. The good we do in the world has ripples, not nipples. A mí no importa si tus sonrisas tienen ondulaciones o pezones. Debes tener hijos. She doesn't care if my smiles have ripples or nipples as long as I have kids. Got it. Makes total sense. Lena frowned. I reject this idea that a woman is only valuable if she's a mother. Abuelita shook her head. No soy machista. No tiene que ver con hombres y mujeres. Seres humanos necesitan pasar los genes. Este es el punto de la vida, la familia. You might not think you're a chauvinist, but the idea that people are only valuable if they pass on their genes sounds like some shit straight out of patriarchy to me. Lena shook her head slowly. I just can't accept that if I don't pass on my genes, I'm some giant Darwinian failure. There's got to be more to life than just passing on my DNA. At this, her grandmother turned back to her work, putting the turkey baster back in the drawer, closing it just a little too hard and cutting the vegetables just a little too quickly. Los jóvenes siempre piensan que son inmortales, she said over her shoulder. I'm not so young that I think I'm immortal. Damn, I'm 28, not 17. I just don't want to find immortality through children. Pues, ¿cómo quieres encontrarlo? How do I expect to find immortality? That's a good question, actually. Well, I want to write books. ¿Y estás escribiéndolos? Am I writing them? Well, a few might turn into books someday. I'm working on some short stories. Cuentos cortos y novelas no son lo mismo. ¿Quién lee cuentos cortos ahora? I know novels and short stories aren't the same, Lena thought. And some people do read short stories. She said, Alison Monroe wrote short stories and she won a Nobel Prize for Literature. Uno, ella es la única, y fue blanca y de Canadá, donde aprovecha mejor sus escritores. Lena couldn't argue with that. Alice Monroe was in fact white, and Canada did take much better care of their writers. Abuelita was on a roll now. Nadie va a dar un premio Nobel a una muchacha negra de los Estados Unidos que escribe cuentos cortos que nadie lee. Lena felt like she'd been punched. She could only repeat it in her mind. Nobody's going to give a Nobel Prize to a black woman from the United States who writes short stories nobody reads. Short stories that nobody reads, she whispered. It would take many years for Lena to fully understand that her grandmother wasn't trying to cut her with that comment. Her grandmother was trying to grapple with the feeling that her own life had been pointless and had reached out and taken hold of the nearest example at hand, her granddaughter's failure, as a convenient metaphor. This justification would grow in Lena's mind over time until it was bigger than the pain of the comment, because that's how forgiveness often works. Thank you all for coming tonight. I know all of you, everyone here came just for this, and that's fantastic. So thank you, and you can donate to the team. We've got books that are for sale by these authors, and otherwise just have a drink and support this fantastic place and enjoy yourselves and celebrate with us. Thank you again.